San Diego's skyline had already and its slow fade into twilight by the time I arrived at the old cinema. Now some kind of high-concept event venue with velvet curtains, restored Art Deco chandeliers, and a guest list full of people who wore money like cologne. The kind of crowd that always made me feel like I had something to prove. I wasn't even supposed to be there at first. The invitation had been a last-minute addition, a corporate gesture for strategic partners, which in reality meant a bunch of us got to stand around in tailored jackets pretending to care about brand launches while sipping drinks we couldn't pronounce. I brought Emily because, well, that's what we used to do, go to things together, show up like we were still in sync. At first, the evening felt like any other. Warm greetings, half smiles, 100 variations of, we should catch up soon. I stuck to the edge of the room, hands in my pockets, watching Emily work her way into conversations with that polished ease of hers. She's always had that quality, presentable, likable, just the right laugh at the right time. I remember when I used to be the one she aimed that laugh at. Not tonight. It happened maybe an hour in. I was nursing a second drink, whiskey neat, standing near one of those retro wall sconces that hummed with soft yellow light. That's when I saw her break away from the cluster of people near the hors d'oeuvre table. She didn't see me watching. Or maybe she did and didn't care. Emily moved with a different energy than I was used to seeing from her lately. Not the tired kind of movement I'd gotten used to at home. This was sharper, deliberate, purposeful. She stepped through the crowd like she knew exactly who she was looking for. And then I saw him. A man, tall, dressed in a perfectly tailored navy suit. The type who didn't just buy expensive things, he wore them like a second skin. He had the kind of confidence that didn't need to announce itself. One glance, and I could tell this wasn't a stranger to her. Not the way she approached. Not the way his eyes lit up when he saw her. Their greeting was subtle, but it hit me like a punch to the ribs. A quick touch of the hand. Palms grazing just long enough to say I've missed this. No awkward hesitation. No nervous tension. Just familiarity. Like this had happened before. Like this was something routine between them. She leaned in close to him, close enough that he didn't have to raise his voice. Her posture shifted, relaxed. And then, almost like clockwork, her hand slipped into her blazer pocket. I saw the glow of her phone screen for half a second before she dimmed it and tucked it away like she didn't want to be caught checking it. That alone wouldn't have meant anything if it weren't for the way she immediately looked around the room. Eyes scanning like she was making sure she hadn't been seen. That was the moment she saw me. Our eyes locked. Mine confused and locked in place. Hers calm, too calm. Like she'd already rehearsed this. She didn't flinch. Didn't act surprised. She smiled. And then something colder settled into her face. Like the curtain dropped. She walked over to me slowly, still wearing that artificial smile. "You okay?" she asked, head tilted, her voice dripping with casual concern. "You've got that weird look again." I didn't respond at first. Couldn't. The scene I just witnessed was still unfolding in my head. Frame by frame. Her hand on his. The closeness. The phone disappearing like it was evidence. I must have looked like I was trying to solve a crime, and in a way I started, but the words failed. She frowned, but not in empathy. More like frustration masked as patience. "You know, you've been doing this a lot lately. Watching me like you're waiting to catch me doing something wrong. It's exhausting." I blinked. "Emily, I just saw." "Saw what exactly?" she interrupted. Smile gone now, eyes narrowed. "Me talking to someone I know from work? God forbid I have a normal conversation without you inventing drama in your head." The audacity of it hit hard, but she wasn't done. "Why do you do that?" she continued. "Make me feel like I'm under surveillance every time we go somewhere? You have no idea how hard it is to be around someone who's always one look away from accusing you of something." The shift was swift, like flicking a switch. 1 second, I was the one trying to make sense of what I saw. The next, I was being accused again of being too suspicious, too cold, too in my head. It was a pattern I was only just beginning to notice in full clarity. Every time she got uncomfortable, every time something cracked her mask, she turned it around, made me the problem. I looked over her shoulder. The The man in the suit had moved to another conversation, but his eyes met mine briefly. Not long, not challenging, but knowing. It wasn't paranoia anymore. It was confirmation. Emily touched my arm, soft, performative, and smiled again. But it wasn't for me. It was for whoever might be watching us. As if to say, look, everything's fine. We're fine. He's just being moody. Again. Come on, she said lightly. Can you please just not make tonight about whatever's going on in your head? Just enjoy the event. For once. And then she was gone. Back to the drinks table. Back to shaking hands. Sharing laughs. Weaving her way into someone else's story like she hadn't just dismissed mine. I stood there for another 10 minutes. Maybe more, trying to swallow the sourness rising in my throat. I told myself I was overreacting. That I didn't know who that man was. That maybe they really did work together. That maybe she really was just checking her phone. But deep down, something had already splintered. I'd been carrying questions for weeks. Little things, subtle things. But tonight I saw it. Not just the lie itself, but the ease of it. The practiced way she shifted the blame and folded me out of the scene like I was an inconvenience. A wrinkle in her performance. And the worst part? She did it so easily. The drive home that night was quiet in the way only disappointment can be. Not explosive, not dramatic, just heavy. Emily sat in the passenger seat, scrolling on her phone with the brightness turned down. The screen angled slightly away from me. The radio played something soft and forgettable. I don't remember the song. I remember the silence between us, stretched thin but unbroken, like both of us were afraid that if one word slipped out, the whole thing would collapse. She didn't mention the man. I didn't either. That was our unspoken agreement lately. Pretend nothing had weight unless someone named it. And I didn't name it. I told myself I'd imagined the tension, the familiarity, the ease with which she'd moved toward him. I told myself work stress made people weird, that I was tired, that I was projecting. That lie lasted about 10 minutes. Because once we got home, the familiar pattern resumed with mechanical precision. She placed her phone face down on the kitchen counter while she kicked off her shoes. Silent mode always. She used to leave the sound on. I remembered that suddenly, like an intrusive thought. Now the phone might as well have been a secret. I've got an early meeting, she said casually, already halfway down the hallway. Tomorrow's going to be long. It was a Saturday. I stood there for a second, keys still in my hand, staring at the darkened screen of her phone like it might light up on its own and explain everything. Didn't. She disappeared into the bedroom and shut the door, not angrily, not gently, just efficiently. That night wasn't different. That was the problem. It fit too cleanly into a series of things I'd been mentally filing under temporary and stress-related for weeks. Months, maybe. The phone face down. The sudden weekend meetings. Nights that stretched later and later without details. Just vague summaries that never quite answered the question I hadn't asked. She'd started wearing a new perfume around that time. Subtle, expensive. Not the one I bought her years ago. When I noticed it, she laughed it off. A sample from work, she'd said. You really notice everything lately. That phrase again. Lately. Like my attention was the issue. We stopped texting during the day. Not all at once, just a gradual disappearance. Conversations that used to be scattered check-ins turned into nothing. When I asked about it, she sighed. Said she was busy. Said it was exhausting to always be available. Said I should try focusing on my own day instead of waiting for updates. At night, she grew colder. Not cruel. Just distant. She started sleeping on the far edge of the bed. Then eventually suggested we sleep separately because of her early mornings. I didn't fight it. I told myself couples go through phases. That proximity isn't the same as int asterisk Macy anyway. But every time her phone buzzed, she stood up and stepped into another room. I started replaying everything I'd brushed aside. Her irritation at simple questions. The way she snapped when I asked how her day was but softened instantly when a notification lit up her screen. The clothes, new dresses I'd never seen before, folded carefully, never worn around me. Tags still on some of them. She said she was saving them. For what I hadn't asked. On Sunday, while she showered, her phone lit up on the counter. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. The name that flashed briefly on the screen wasn't saved. Just a number. No preview text. Just the vibration, muted and insistent, like it expected privacy. I stepped back like I'd been caught doing something wrong. That's when it hit me. I wasn't discovering new behavior. I was finally seeing it. By Monday, the feeling followed me everywhere. At work. In the car. Even in quiet moments when nothing was happening. I'd catch myself defending her in my own head, preemptively arguing against accusations no one had made. That should have been the warning sign. When you start building a defense before the trial even begins. Tuesday night, she came home late again. Smelled faintly of wine. She said there'd been a team call that ran long. She didn't sit down. Didn't ask about my day. Went straight to the bedroom and closed the door. I stayed in the living room, lights off, staring at the reflection in the black TV screen. I looked tired, older, like someone who had been slowly edged out of his own life. That's when I stopped asking questions. Not because I didn't want answers, but because I realized she was already living as if I wasn't entitled to them. And once that understanding settled in, something inside me went quiet. Not angry, not dramatic, just alert, like a switch had flipped. I didn't know what I would find yet, but I knew this wasn't confusion anymore. It was a pattern, and patterns don't disappear on their own. I didn't confront her. Not after San Diego, not after the patterns became impossible to ignore. Something in me understood that questions only gave her room to maneuver, to reshape reality into something where I was always the unreasonable one. So I waited, not patiently but deliberately. The confirmation didn't come from a message or a confession. Came from numbers. We shared access to accounts, not because we monitored each other, but because it had always been easier that way. Bills, travel, groceries. One afternoon, while paying a utility charge, I noticed a transaction that didn't fit. A short-term booking. 2 hours. Near the Phoenix airport. Middle of a Tuesday. At first, I assumed it was fraud. Then I saw another. Different day. Same location. Same duration. Then another. Always during work hours. Always on days she said meetings were stacked back to back. I stared at the screen longer than I should have, waiting for a reasonable explanation to form on its own. Didn't. I checked the dates against her calendar. Perfect alignment. Claimed meetings. Claimed pressure. Claimed exhaustion. All of it mapped neatly onto those charges like they'd been planned together. I didn't say anything that night, or the next day. I waited until the next booking appeared, fresh and undeniable, then took a day off work without telling her. I drove to Phoenix in silence, the highway stretching out like a decision already made. The place looked exactly like it should have, anonymous, clean, designed for discretion. No personality, no questions. I walked to the front desk and gave her name calmly, like I already knew the answer. The clerk hesitated, just a fraction of a second. Enough. She checked in earlier, he said carefully. She's not alone. I nodded. I thanked him. I stepped outside before my legs remembered they were supposed to hold me upright. I didn't go upstairs. I didn't need to. The story was finished the moment someone else confirmed what she'd been carefully hiding. I sat in my car for a long time, watching people come and go, realizing how small the world becomes when a lie finally collapses. On the drive back, everything rearranged itself. Not emotionally, logically. The man in the suit, the phone, the perfume, the distance. None of it was random. None of it was stress. It was infrastructure. After that, proof stopped being subtle. Once you stop doubting yourself, things get loud. A lipstick in her car that wasn't her shade. A wine bar receipt dated the same night she'd said she was on a late call. A new dress, tags still on, hidden behind clothes she actually wore around me. The final confirmation came accidentally. I was clearing old files when I rewatched a corporate team-building video from months back. Just background noise at first. Then I saw her, standing beside him. Same man, same posture, same ease. Her gestures weren't professional, they were practiced. int asterisk mate without touching. I paused the video and sat back. That was when the last excuse dissolved. She continued living as if nothing had changed. Coming and going. Polite. Irritated when I was near. Distant when I wasn't. And the strangest part was that I no longer felt anger. Just clarity. Like the moment after a storm passes and everything is sharp again. I stopped asking questions. Stopped reacting. Stopped trying to understand her version of things. I wasn't interested anymore, because I finally understood mine. After Phoenix, everything settled into place like the final piece of a puzzle you didn't want to finish. And once the full picture formed, I couldn't unsee it. Every strange interaction, every excuse that didn't quite make sense, every time I had second-guessed myself. It all crystallized into something disturbingly coherent. There was no more confusion, only recognition. I started to notice smaller things, details I hadn't given weight to before, like the way she started carrying a second charger in her bag. Why two? One for work, one for him? The sudden interest in running errands alone. The way she flinched, not obviously but enough, when I asked if I could borrow her car. Pause before a smile. That was the tell. One evening I went out to get groceries. When I got into her car, the passenger seat was reclined just slightly more than it ever was with me. I adjusted it without thinking. Then I saw it. A lipstick tube wedged between the seat and center console. Deep Berg asterisk NDY. Too dark for her. Emily's colors were always soft pinks, corals. I would have noticed this one on her, but I hadn't, because she hadn't worn it for me. That same night, while she claimed to be on another team call, I found a receipt tucked inside a side pocket of her purse, carelessly folded, like she wasn't even trying anymore. A wine bar downtown. Place we'd never been together. Dated 2 nights prior. I knew exactly where I was that night. Alone on the couch, half watching a documentary, wondering if I should wait up or pretend I was asleep. I didn't confront her. I wasn't interested in drama. I just slid the receipt back into the pocket and left it there. The final straw wasn't even in real time. It came from something old. I was cleaning up my desktop one weekend, trying to distract myself, when I stumbled across an archived corporate video from a quarterly retreat, something I hadn't thought twice about when it was filmed. I hit play without thinking. It opened with a wide pan of a hotel ballroom, mingling coworkers, rounds of applause, someone fumbling a mic joke. Then I saw her, in the background, standing beside him. Him. The same man from San Diego. Expensive suit, slick haircut, eyes that always seemed just a little too amused. They weren't touching, but their body language spoke volumes. They weren't standing side by side. They were leaning inward, smiling in that way people do when they've shared something secret. Her hand brushed his arm mid-laugh, reflexively, like it had happened before, like it always happened. I paused the video, backed it up, watched again. Same result. I sat there, laptop open, staring at the frozen frame like it was a courtroom exhibit. It wasn't just the moment itself. It was the realization that it had happened months ago. Long before Phoenix. Long before I started noticing anything. While I'd been sitting across from her at dinner, listening to her talk about long days and tough deadlines, this had already been happening. When I closed the laptop, it felt final. Not emotionally. Not yet. But logistically. Something clicked into place. Not a snap. Not a shatter. Just a clean shift, like a gear sliding forward. She came home later that night acting normal. Too normal. Kissed me on the cheek, talked about work, poured herself a glass of wine. I just watched her. That's when I realized the most disturbing part. She wasn't hiding it anymore. Not really. Not from someone who knew what to look for. She was only hiding it from the version of me that didn't want to know. The version I had already buried. After that, I stopped filling the silence. No more small talk. No more questions like, "How was your day?" No more reaching for a connection she had long since withdrawn. She noticed, of course, rolled her eyes, called me distant, said I was moody lately. It was almost funny, like watching someone argue with a ghost. She kept playing her part, getting up early, staying out late, face glowing from the light of a phone that never left her hand. When I was in the room, she kept conversations short. When I wasn't, she was on the move, texting, calling, scheduling. Always busy. But now I saw everything. She hadn't just disconnected from our life. She had repurposed it, replaced the time, the attention, the int asterisk Macy. She had reassigned it all like it was a spreadsheet. And the worst part wasn't the betrayal. It was the ease. She kept living like nothing was happening. That was the hardest part to describe when people later asked how it ended. There wasn't a breakdown. No shouting match. No slammed doors or public scene. Just this bizarre, slow unraveling where she kept showing up in our life like a guest passing through. Smiling when convenient, frowning when I didn't play along. As if the roles had flipped and I was now the one ruining the script she had so carefully curated. She still cooked occasionally. Not for me, but as part of the routine. She still asked if I wanted anything from the store before she left for errands she never explained. Still nodded politely when I said, "Good morning" or "night." Still moved around the house with the same grace, the same self-assured rhythm. But she didn't see me anymore. Not really. I was furniture, something to step around, something that didn't require acknowledgement unless it was inconvenient not to. I started noticing how many of her smiles were saved for other people. For her phone. For the people she texted with a glow on her face I hadn't seen in years. The phone lit up more now. She didn't even try to hide it anymore. She stopped stepping into the hallway to take calls. She answered them right there in the kitchen, speaking in coded language, abbreviating everything into plausible deniability. "I'm on my way now," she'd say with a tone too casual, too warm. Or, "Can you send it again?" It didn't come through. And always that quick glance toward me to see if I'd react. I never did. That was the new rule. No reactions. She thought it meant I didn't know. In truth, it meant I was already gone. Not physically, not yet, but inside. Something in me had shut down. That last flicker of hope, the one that told me maybe I was imagining things, maybe it was a phase, maybe it was salvageable. It went out one morning when I realized I hadn't missed her in days. I missed who she was once. I missed the memory of her. But the person I lived with now, I didn't recognize her. And worse, she didn't seem to recognize me either. We'd become outlines of people who used to be something real. She stopped trying to explain herself. That was when I knew she believed she had won. That her lies had outpaced my curiosity. I suppose in her mind, if I wasn't confronting her, I must have accepted the new terms. She didn't know I had simply stopped playing. In those final weeks, I watched her more than I spoke to her. Not out of malice, just observation. Like someone studying the end of a fire that had already burned the house down. She drifted through our home like it was a set, saying lines that used to mean something. "Want me to grab anything from the store? Are you working late again? We should have dinner this weekend. Just us." But it was all surface. The warmth was mechanical, the timing always suspiciously aligned with her phone going silent. Like she was maintaining just enough normalcy to keep suspicion beneath the surface, just enough kindness to avoid a confrontation. I recognized it now for what it was: control, emotional stage management, a backup script in case the truth ever bubbled up too close to the surface. But by then, I didn't need her to confirm anything. I already knew, so I didn't argue. I didn't accuse. I didn't check her phone, didn't track her locations, didn't interrogate her timelines. I didn't need to. The worst part of betrayal isn't the act itself. It's the moment you realize the other person stopped caring whether or not they get caught. And that's exactly what this had become. A performance for an audience she believed had stopped paying attention. She grew irritated with my silence. That was the only reaction I gave her, and it drove her crazy. "You've been so weird lately," she said one morning, pouring coffee without looking at me. Like, distant. I nodded. "Yeah. That's it? Just, yeah? What do you want me to say?" She shrugged, but her tone sharpened. "I don't know. Maybe that you're not sleepwalking through your own life?" I looked up from my mug, met her eyes, and for a moment, she flinched. Like she'd seen something she wasn't ready for. Not anger, not accusation, just clarity. I'm not the one pretending, I said quietly. She stared at me, searching for the old rhythm, the game she used to win. But I didn't follow. I just stood up, grabbed my keys, and left for work like it was any other day. That's when the shift happened. Not with her, with me. I stopped trying to understand her, stopped trying to fix anything. I stopped pretending I was confused. There was no confusion left. Only math, time, lies, places, receipts, confirmations, and the empty space between us, which had once been love and now was just vacancy. I started preparing without a word. Quiet, deliberate steps. She didn't notice. She was too busy texting, too busy maintaining her new rhythm, too caught up in her carefully arranged second life to realize I'd already beg asterisk and the process of removing myself from the first. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something like peace. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I didn't even ask why. I just made my decision in silence. While she texted in the next room, I quietly moved documents, updated passwords, separated finances. I scheduled appointments, found a place to stay, began folding myself out of her life like I'd never been there. No confrontation, no drama, just cold precision. She had chosen secrecy. I chose absence. She thought I'd never leave because I hadn't reacted. But what she didn't understand, what she never saw coming, was that when someone stops fighting, it isn't always surrender. Sometimes it's preparation. I didn't leave with a scream. I left with a whisper. And in that quiet, I reclaimed something she'd long taken for granted. My ability to disappear without permission. After I left, she turned to mutual friends for comfort, painting me as distant, unfeeling, someone who just walked away. I didn't argue. I let her speak. I didn't need revenge, just distance. Eventually, I showed one person just enough, just one truth undeniable. Word spread. The performance cracked. And suddenly, her story didn't hold. She tried to reach me, not to fix things, but to rewrite the ending. I didn't respond. I moved cities, changed rhythms, started over where her name carried no weight. The hardest part wasn't leaving. It was knowing she thought she could erase me while still expecting me to stay. But I was never hers to bury. I was the one with the shovel, and I used it to dig my way out, quietly and completely.